Do it.
Lior Gantz, hello, sir. It's good to see you today.
Absolutely. Great to be
I,
here.
you and I were overdue for a call, and unfortunately, we're here to discuss what's happening right now in Israel, as opposed to what you and I normally speak about, which is precious metals. And this is to me, and obviously to you and the people of Israel, this is incredibly important. And with that said, I have a series of questions that I wanted to ask you because there's only so much information that we get here on the news,
Ask
and
away.
yeah, and so you're on the ground there, and so for those of you that are watching this video, Lior has been a friend of the channel for at least 3 years now. He's been on several times. You have seen him in the stacking community on several channels. And so Lior lives in Tel Aviv,
Correct.
and I wanted to ask you, Lior, what was happening when everything started to unfold for you?
Specifically about last Saturday
Yes,
morning.
yes.
Okay. At 6:30 in the morning, my 7-year-old wakes me up to the sound of sirens. Sirens are activated when the Hamas terrorist organization fires missiles and rockets funded by Iran from the Gaza Strip, mostly from inside of buildings that civilians live in,
Mm-hmm.
or from hospitals, libraries, universities, anything where they can use human shields for because that's their values. And we because our 20% of our GDP as a miracle nation that in the last 75 years has gone from nothing to the 29th richest country in the world, because 20% of our GDP comes from tech and innovation. We have developed what's called the Iron Dome system, which
Mm-hmm.
has been sold to countless countries and have been and almost defies physics in its brilliance and its innovation and its ability to save lives.
I
Um,
oh, sorry, go on.
it's the, I'll just elaborate a little bit. Once the siren is activated, every newer building in this country, in the sovereign country, is equipped with a shelter, which is a fortified room with a better door than a normal door, and much thicker walls. And those are meant to save lives, because that's something we cherish for thousands and thousands of years. And That's what we did, my entire family. And then news came in of developments of the fact that this is not a regular missile attack, but part of a very elaborate year and a half long um, operation that it was meant to create a Mogadishu in Israel, and that was what was done.
When did you realize the severity of the attacks? When did you realize how large scale?
I believe around 8:30, we started to realize the situation to a greater detail.
So, um, over the last week now, what is it that you and your family have been doing? Because I would imagine that there are probably strict curfews in place that you maybe have to be indoors more than normal. I mean,
Here in
what?
Tel Aviv is not the front lines,
Right.
um, so like in every other war, uh, the people, how do you say it in English? The people that are not in the front,
Yeah. I guess in the back
in the
lines.
back.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there is a word for it, but I'm blacked out for that word.
That's okay.
But what we do is um, we focus on making sure that we are 100% united, 100% on point. We help everybody in the front lines, donations of equipment, of food, of supplies, of morale, um, anything that you can think of that somebody would do when he needs to defend justice, we do.
So, um, I know this is going to be also a very personal question for you, but I wanted to ask you, um, have you lost anybody that you know
Not
or
personally,
okay.
not personally. And before we go any further, I just want to say,
Mhm.
and I'll quote from not from the Old Testament, but I'll quote from the New Testament. Rejoice not in iniquity, but with the truth. In other words, anything I say is 100% fact. There's nothing that is opinionated. There is nothing here that you cannot verify if you look exactly at the information. And I'm sure in a packed interview like this, your comment section will be flooded with all sorts of opinions.
Yeah.
Please just save your bombastic language for something else.
Yeah.
If you can't back what I'm about to say in this interview and what I've said so far with facts, I ask that you just reserve your right to, well, do whatever you want. We live in a free world, but just understand that you do nothing to help anything.
Yeah.
If the
Those
comment section is filled with very opinionated, factual, educational comments, then I've done my job.
yeah.
Personally, I have not lost anyone. I can say that the amount of funerals here that my friends have gone to, and stuff like that is insane. My brother went to 7 funerals this week alone. This will not stop. It will go on and go on. Um, and I can say that many friends of mine are actively in the front lines, and I speak with them frequently and strengthen them as much as I can and help in any way that I can.
As soon as I heard on Saturday that this was happening, I reached out to the team at Gold Standard Media, who you are very, very close friends with, and
Wealth Research Group.
Wealth Research Group, and I was, um, concerned obviously for your safety because, like I said, I've known you now for a couple of years, and I was relieved when I heard from Kenneth that you were okay and that your family was all right. One of the concerns that people hear now too is that there's a possibility of this also spiraling where other terrorist organizations like Hezbollah might join in, and possibly other neighboring countries may start participating in the fight as well, which is obviously why the United States sent their largest war carrier out to the coast of Israel to kind of send a message, don't even think about it. But from what you have been hearing, has there been any, how should I put this? Any, I guess, kind of intelligence or anything that's been coming forward saying that the likelihood of that is probable, or does it seem like right now it's kind of just between?
There, you don't need intelligence. There's certainly things happening in the northern border
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah. Um, where now do, and I know you do not have a crystal ball, um, and this conflict has been going on for hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years. Where do we go from here? It's it's unbelievable, but that this level of barbarity is occurring in 2023, and the amount of hate. So yeah,
Let me take you back. Let me explain the
yeah,
conflict. How about
yeah.
that?
Please, yeah.
Okay. Okay. I hope you have time.
I have
No,
time.
but in anyone that listens to this from here on will understand probably thousands of years of history in probably a 15-minute monologue. Um, in the history of this area in the world, this is probably the most documented piece of land on planet Earth. There have been millions of pilgrims that have come here in the last few thousand years. Jews and Arabs and Christians and Muslims and Druze and Turks and anything else you can think of. Not a single one of them has ever met a Palestinian. There is no such thing as a Palestinian. Um, Now, in the 20th century, as part of the wave of nationalistic movements that started around the world as part of the fall of empires like the Ottoman Empire, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and the German Empire, etc., nationalistic movements rose, and as part of that, a person was very important in the Arab community in Jerusalem, Haj Amin al-Husseini, a known Nazi, many times frequented with Hitler, even in Germany, created this idea called the Palestinian nationality. Now, there is nothing to it. There is no common heritage. There's no common story, no common folklore, no common anything. It just doesn't. It's a fiction of the imagination. Now you can say, Lior, well, even if it's a fiction of the imagination, now that they have grouped themselves as a nationality, don't they deserve human rights? Don't they deserve the right to identify? Yes, they do. They do. Any person in the world deserves human rights and the right to identify. What no one has the right to do is to reinvent history. So let me make sure that everybody understands history. In the documentation of this region, there have been thousands of books written about the history of this land. And I'm not just talking about the Bible. And personally, I don't believe that God gave this land to the Jews. I don't believe that God gave anything to anybody over any other person in the history of the planet. I don't believe that God's personal to anyone. What I do believe in is documentation. Thousands and thousands of books. Archaeology, digs of archaeology, finding coins, artifacts, entire villages, texts, all in Hebrew, showing the connection between Jews and the land of Israel. In the history of the Muslims, there have been three main capitals: Cairo, Damascus, and Baghdad. In the Bible, Jerusalem is mentioned 600 times. In the Quran, it is mentioned a big fat 0. In the 17th chapter of the Quran, it is referred, there is a reference to what's called El Aqsa, the Mosque of El Aqsa. There is nothing better in the history of religion, and if you want to make something holy, than to create competition. And so the Mosque of El Aqsa, which means Aqsa, also in Hebrew, or Ketz or Kitzon, means the end. So the mosque at the end of something, which during the colonial expansion of Muslim empires into this region, was then ascribed to the very same exact spot that the two temples of the Jews 1,500 years prior existed, documented, lived. Everybody lived here, all the Jewish community, in the same exact place. This is where the story of a prophet that won up to heaven has existed, in the very same spot. So just wrap your mind around that idea. The land of Judea was conquered by the Romans, and in order to and after they turned Jews into slaves and dragged them into Rome, they changed its name to Palestine. So even the name Palestine just comes from the Roman Empire, who tried to erase history and change the narrative. So throughout the Muslim history, Jerusalem doesn't play a big role at all. The only time it plays a big role is when they choose to fight other religions over it. At all the times, the Mecca and El Medina are the two sacred places. They are in Saudi Arabia, which is why the importance to global peace and prosperity is to normalize the relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel, connecting the holiest of places to all religions and bringing in peace. Trump, with the Abraham Accords, started this process. We have tried to continue this process, but to no avail. And by the way, this is not a Jewish problem. The Muslims, if you read any of the doctrines of the jihad, in other words, of Iran and its offshoots around the Middle East, the idea is not to annihilate the Jews. It's to annihilate Jews and Christians and create a Muslim caliphate. Or caliphate just means to replace you with them. There was a person who tried to do that in Europe just 80 years ago. Some countries were not quick to understand it. Other countries did realize it. He brought the world almost to destruction. So I would just say um, that's to be considered. In the 17th and 18th century, the Ottoman Empire ruled over this area. And during that time, because of persecutions in other regions, Jews started to come here
Yep.
since the 1850s. And in 1897, they formally created a nationalistic movement. No, it's not a colonial movement. It's very fashionable today at universities in America and other places where students just don't know anything. They know TikTok. They
Yeah.
know how to get a frappuccino, but
Yeah.
they know nothing else. It's very fashionable to hate on colonial regimes, and I agree. I don't like colonial regimes as well. But let's talk about the Jews. Since the 7th century and up until the 20th century, so for 12 centuries, the Jews that settled here did not steal a single village. Let me say that again. In 1,300 years, there's not a single incident of any Jewish person ever stealing a single shred of sand from any of the other settlers of this land. Not a single one, and not even after. So now let's talk about the more modern areas. And by the way, for Christians looking at this, Nazareth was 80% Christian. Today it's 80% Muslim. Bethlehem was 80% Christian. Today it's 80% Muslim. 2 million Christian Iraqis were expelled from Iraq just in the last 20 years. Syria, I don't know if you want to Google that. It used to be a country. I don't even want to tell you how many atrocities have been committed to Christians there. And you can look around the world and see where violence exists, if it's in Jewish communities or in other communities. Okay, so now let's talk about modern history, which is where most people get a lot of their crazy ideas from. The And by the way, Mark Twain, Herman Melville, great American authors who came here during the early times before the country was formed. Yeah, you should read some of their writings about the way that this area used to be. When the Ottoman Empire fell and the British and the French couldn't agree on who would get this land, the League of Nations decided that it should be a British mandate over the area. So from 1917 till 1948, that's essentially what happened. But formally in 1922 started the mandate. Some people say that the British were pro-Jews. Some people say that they were pro-Arabs. Let me tell you something about any colonial empire. The British were pro-British. The two things they cared about was the Suez Canal and the Iraqi oil flowing into the ports here, and then from here onto the rest of their empire. So I don't like colonial empires as much as anybody else. During this time, they needed cheap labor, so they brought in workers from Egypt, from Syria, and other places, and half of them settled in the area now called the Gaza Strip, and to the north of it on the beaches. And you can see that from the last names of people in Gaza. They are Egyptians. So just consider that. And then the UN resolution came. So a UN resolution, I don't know if you like resolutions and democratic votes and things that 100+ nations decide on: sovereignty, rule of law, civil rights, the Geneva Convention, or anything else that tries to eradicate the dark ages that humans have come from since the cave people to the barbarics and other ideas that people have had in order to justify war. But in 1947, on the 29th of November, the UN resolution of 181, 2 states for 2 people. The Jews said yes and agreed. The Arabs decided to murder 5 Jews the next morning and topple over a bus, and that's how the war started. Now, I looked up the etymology of the word lose, and it comes from laws or los from Old English, and that means the price you pay when something is taken away from you. And win or win comes from Germany or from Old German, and that's the reward you get for acquiring something. In a war that you start, you should be you should know you can lose, and that's what happened. So the country of Israel was formed, and in war, many things happen, especially in wars that you start, and especially in wars that you start with your neighbors. So I just want Americans to understand this. Think of countries that tried to create start wars with Americans. One such naval empire was called Japan. I think we all understand what America did to them after they crossed the line. Before Japan came the Germans. The Germans tried to invoke the Mexicans to invade California. This is 1916. On account of that, Woodrow Wilson declared war and joined the First World War in Europe, with the direct agenda to weaken Germany. I can talk about the Soviet Union and the formation of NATO alliance in order to stop the spread of communism because of what people like Joseph Stalin did to the world. So, war can be won, war can be lost, especially when you start. You have to consider the consequences. Villages were destroyed, obviously. 700,000 Arabs were basically displaced from where they previously lived before they started the war. At the same time, by the way, 800,000 Jews were displaced from Arab countries. So kind of think about that. Now let's talk about the division. Was Resolution 181 by the UN justified? What the Jews received was about a third of the land. And I'm sorry, over a third of the land, but they were only a third of the people. At the same time, the Arabs got disproportionately less than the amount of people that they had in Israel at the time, but they also got the entire country of Jordan. So the insane ratio is far more land to the Arab country. What did we get? We got swamps and desert. In those swamps and deserts, we invented irrigation, drip irrigation. We invented fruits and vegetables that grow in the desert with salt water, and even though they grow with salt water in the desert, they're sweet and are exported to most European countries. We have invented hundreds of patents, if not thousands, and 20% of our GDP comes from tech innovation. We have created something that can only be rivaled by what Singapore has done in the last 70 years. Because of open-mindedness, because of our investment in education and in our future, in our youth, and in nonviolence, and in thinking outside the box. If you wish to come here and see what the other parts look like, you're more than welcome to. You also can Google all of that. I will not say more on that regard. I will just say that in 1964, this is 3 years before the Six-Day War, before basically the Israeli military conquered both the West Bank and Gaza Strip. In the 16 years between that, so in between 1948 and 1964, Jordan was the controller of the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and Egypt was the controller of the Gaza Strip. So, no occupation. But in 1964, the PLO, or the Palestine Liberation Army, was created before what many people call the occupation. Um, After the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip um, by Israel, it's not occupation; it's war, which was won. Um, there have been many attempts to settle the dispute and create two countries for two people. Uh, we willingly uh, took all of our settlements out of the Gaza Strip
Mm-hmm.
in 2005. Um, then we showered the Gaza Strip with money. Not only the Israelis, not only did the Israelis give money to the Gaza Strip in order for them to invest in education in their youth. They are very young demographics, about half
Half,
are
yeah.
are children. But the U.S., the UN, the Arab countries, and the EU, everyone has given them money. And what have we got in return in the past 23 years from that? In 2008, Prime Minister Ehud Olmert tried to settle the dispute by giving them the entire West Bank and East Jerusalem. They said no. I should say that in 1937, the British sent a politician named Pill here, Peel. He realized that you need two countries for two people, and the solution that he gave, you should Google it. It gave Israelis a country that is about a tenth the size of what it is today, and still the Arabs declined his offer. So I think that what it all comes down to is something that in the West is kind of hard for people to understand because they live, and in the U.S. it's kind of hard to understand because you live in a country where you separate religion from state. In the Middle East, it is not the case. Religion is more important than the state. And it also comes down to values. So when it comes to religion, you should know a few terms. One is called waqf, the other is called jihad. Um, and jihad is basically a religious war against infidels. If what you can think of is things we learned about 1,000 and 1,500 years ago, and have been since eradicated from the world because of their barbarity. No, it's still around. It's it essentially originates from post 1979 Iran, but it gets its power, I should say, from that, but and not from the Iranian people, but from the Iranian regime. I should say that very unequivocally. There are many people that live there that are obviously against it, as there are many in all communities that are against it. This is not any sort of classification or generalization or anything, but the effects of it are the majority.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's important to really understand. Um, and that is the struggle of toxic religious delusions,
Mm-hmm.
as and between rationality and between values. So I hope what you understand is that the these movements are not trying to create a country for the so-called Palestinian nationality alongside the beautiful, peace-loving, and flourishing country of Israel that has created a miracle in the Middle East. Not in 4,000 years has there been a civilization, culture as flourishing as this, but instead of it, on top of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is what we are facing, and that is what any peace loving person who wants his himself and his children and anybody else to enjoy on his time on this planet is facing.
Yeah. Lior, I know again that the amount of stress and everything that you and your family and the people of Israel are under right now, and I want to thank you for taking the time to, come on the
I
channel.
hope you learned something.
Oh,
That's all I can hope.
yeah. I mean, it's very important for the viewers for sure to hear it as well. And it's important that we stay in touch. So I'm hopeful that you can come back on in the coming weeks to give us an update. And
And we are
obviously,
very proud of our country and invite anyone after this um, to see it, to
yeah,
enjoy it. Um, uh, whatever religion you may be part of, or if you have no interest in the three major religions and just want to see it. As you can see, I am Jew by heritage. Uh, I live a very secular life, uh, but a man is not an island.
Lior, thank you so much. And, our thoughts and prayers are with you. And I will speak with you soon.
Thank you.